Currently, Korea and the rest of the world are in a period of stagnant growth. We can think of Korea reunification as a solution to long-term slow economic growth. Reunification will bring more opportunities for development and create more jobs.
If reunification is achieved, South Korea will fund North Korea to reduce economic gap between South and North Korea. South Korea has only tax to finance the funds to send. Given that we have to develop North Korean with our tax, reunification is a loss.
One-sidedly, the idea that our taxes will be used for North Korean growth is wrong because we are a capitalist country. South Korea has not developed by state-led project alone. Rather, it has grown by investment from each company, state support, and attracting foreign funds. The infrastructure must be built, but it will not be by state-led projects, but by investing attraction from companies. Rather, the end of war could bring stability to security and attract foreign capital. Reunification will certainly be another opportunity for growth.
In long run, North Korea is worth investing in. However, there are no private companies that will invest in North Korea, which has no foundation immediately after reunification. The South Korean government will be responsible for the funds needed for North Korea's growth. In Germany, West Germany has invested heavily in East Germany, yet there still remains an economic gap. Even East Germany, which had a fairly high standard of living in the communist world, it is still suffering from relative poverty of West Germany. We don't know what consequence will bring if North and South Korea, which has a larger rich and poor gap, reunify.
The time when East and West Germany were united was in the 90s, when the wind of liberalization was blowing with the collapse of the Soviet Union. From the 1980s to the early 1990s, most countries grew rapidly due to global boom. Some say the reunification of East and West Germany is a unilateral loss for West Germany. But in 2020, the global economic growth rate is negative. The solution to Korea's economic growth slump will be reunification. It could be an alternative to tackle the problems of current Korean economy, which relies solely on exports. In a way, unification is similar to colonial acquisition for us. Securing cheap manpower, solid domestic market, and cheap resources. Wasn't the expansion of the imperial past not based on any infrastructure?
In Germany, West Germany wanted to open up while supporting East Germany. East Germany also slowly opened up and reunified. But we've done countless economic aid and appeasement to North Korea to open up but achieved nothing. Look at the incident in which a South Korean woman in her 50s was shot and killed by a North Korean soldier during the tour. Because North Korea will also be subject to minimum wage, it cannot be cheaper labor than South Korea. You think reunification is easy, but we can't afford 26-fold economic difference. Your claim to compare reunification to a colonial acquisition could cause conflict between North and South Korea.
The nation's investment is not used solely for North Korea's growth. Rather, it is likely to become a state-led job creation project like the New Deal policy. There will be more money circulating on the market, and consumers' wallet will open when the New Deal policy goes into effect. It can be a quantitative easing policy, not a unilateral waste of taxes.
The economic power gap between North and South Korea is 26 times. With negative growth, can we handle the economic gap with North Korea? It is harsh for us to develop North Korea by raising taxes right now if we think of economic gains decades after reunification.
Reunification will not lower the economical level we are holding. Even if large-scale civil engineering work take place in national level, it is not unilaterally giving money to North Koreans. The policy such as New Deal is part of quantitative economic easing. Until now, our North Korea policy has been too passive. You claim 26-fold economic difference, but rather it is a good opportunity to resolve the regional imbalance focused on Seoul.
The economic level we are currently holding will naturally be lowered. If the country imprints money indiscriminately, it will depreciate like Zimbabwe. In order to preserve the value of money, each country should adjust amount of issuance. Reunification is not an immediate step at present. Indiscriminatingly printing money is a stupid way to overcome 26-fold economic difference.
I agree with you. Reunification doesn't seem to be a jackpot. My idea that cheap labor will be the main factor in economic revitalization is wrong. Integration between countries should be watched with longer time. Democratic politics and autocracy do not coexist. This unification brings about a great national conflict.
Unification after Kim Jong-un's disappearance is more rugged and painful. This is because many countries will claim North Korea's possession and occupation. While Kim Jong-un's status is maintained, The government should gradually increase exchanges at the private level.
A unified nation with Kim Jong-un's status maintained has two heads. This will cause great confusion. Above all, there is no reason for Kim Jong-un to agree to the transfer of power. They have been in power for 3 generations and have continued their reign of terror. Kim Jong-un's transfer of power means the end of the reign of terror, and the anger of North Koreans, who have been suppressed for the time, will be directed to Kim Jong-un. Therefore, Kim Jong-un will never let go of his power.
I think that part of the current administration's conciliatory and hardline tactics works effectively. There is a way to achieve reunification, even if it is not necessarily a guarantee of status as it is now. Even if the form of a state changes, don't the existing head of state live on some level of status? Historically, after the fall of Chuk dynasty, Joseon was well fed in the Qin dynasty. The same is true of the Japanese emperor and the Queen of England in modern times. By applying this method, we can naturally merge North Korea.
We've developed a win-win strategy, but Kim Jong-un has only used it. If you want to be friends with someone who's poles apart, you have to try. But Kim Jong-un makes no effort. Unplanned unification with a dictator who pursues only his own interest is bound to fail.
I never said unification with North Korea should be done without a plan. Rather, it should not be done hastily. Kim Jong-un's uncooperative attitude now comes from conflicts between various countries, including the United States, as well as Korea's attitude. This should not be regarded as Kim Jong-un's use. Rather, this could be an expression of Kim Jong-un's anxiety over the current situation. And this uneasiness of Kim Jong-un should be seen as a good sign that unification can naturally be agreed upon.
The Reunification industrial complex and Mount Yungang started from win-win strategy, but it was cancelled with Kim Jong-un's will. From the point where a dictator feels bad about the interference of other countries, the unification negotiations goes according to the taste of a dictator. The tendencies of democratic and autocratic politics are so contradictory. Only when the system is the same can the unification work well. Forced unification brings about the ruin of Korea.
I never said unification with North Korea should be done without a plan. Rather, it should not be done hastily. Kim Jong-un's uncooperative attitude now comes from conflicts between various countries, including the United States, as well as Korea's attitude. This should not be regarded as Kim Jong-un's use. Rather, this could be an expression of Kim Jong-un's anxiety over the current situation. And this uneasiness of Kim Jong-un should be seen as a good sign that unification can naturally be agreed upon.
Currently, Kim Jong-un only makes threats. The way to retrieve what was taken is to drive out the dictator. There has been no peaceful way to make this possible in human history. When comparing Prince Harry of England with Kim Jong-un, Prince Harry of England lived in perfect harmony with the people. However, Kim Jong-un is using his dictatorial powers to carry out his reign of terror. It is a stupid way for us to bend to win the favor of such a man.
Kim Jong-un's reign of terror is due to anxiety over the collapse of his regime. You said there was no peaceful way to get rid of the dictator, but if you act with a long time and patience, peaceful unification is possible. You are viewing Kim Jong-un emotionally. Put the anger and hostility aside for a moment. Why don't you have long-term hope of getting back the land we've been taken away from?
What you're saying is absorption unification, which requires one side to surrender. The power-tasting dictator puts down power on his own. It is only your delusion that makes it possible. Kim Jong-un won't change even if we act with long time of patience when North Koreans who have been completely overpowered by the politics of terror-killing surveillance can't speak out.
Kim Jong-un knows the fact that the current system won't last long under pressure from various economic sanctions. Therefore, approaching the issue of unification like you exacerbates the situation.
Unification is too early in the absence of sufficient emotional and economic exchanges. Unification of the current situation is a forced union of South and North Koreans who are not familiar with each other. There will be no active exchange of labor, funds, etc. The gap between the rich and the poor between the two Koreas will only worsen.
There were regional feelings between Gyeongsang and Jeolla provinces in the past, but now that the internet has developed, many of those local feeling has been resolved. Local feelings are caused by the absences of information. The people of the two Koreas are not different immigrants, so they can overcome it. And because the market operates in accordance with the logic of capital, your argument that there will be no active exchange of material and human resources is wrong. Rather, it relies solely on exports by expanding the domestic market. It will ease the problems of the Korean economy.
If unification is achieved, there will be many conflicts due to cultural differences. We have to think about a way to ease the conflict. Above all, North Korea is currently not prepared for reunification with us at all. The pain we have to endure is too great for reunification while looking only at economic benefits of the future.
Your argument that a lot of conflict will arise due to cultural differences is correct. However, the argument that the unification is not prepared at all for cultural differences is hard to agree. Culture is where people meet and spread naturally, and new culture may be born. North Koreans could come down to South Korea to create new lifestyles. South Koreans could also go up to North Korea to create a new culture. It's all within the confines of international culture. It will not deviate much, and a new culture will be formed after temporary short conflict. The suffering of the South and North Korean people will not be as great as expected.
Given that there still exists a gap between the current Gyeongsangdo and older generations of Jeolla provinces, conflicts between the South and North are not considered temporary. It will take quite a while for the conflict to be resolved. Without sufficient emotional and cultural exchanges between the two countries, unification is impossible currently.
The emotional gap between Gyeongsang and Jeolla provinces is largely caused by the government's wrong anti-communist education in the past. Now that education is back on track, the younger generations will not agree with the local sentiment. In Jeolla-do, people from Gyeongsang-do are not discriminated against. So, unification between the two Koreas will be similar. In fact, North Korean defectors who came to South Korea did activated like YouTubers and broadcasters and are adapting well to the culture of South Korean better than anyone else. Just by looking at how South Korean cultural contents are flowing into North Korea secretly, you can notice that North Koreans will not have much resistance to accepting South Korea's culture and lifestyle.
Viewing unification in the short term, there's a lot of financial burden on our generation, but it is needed when considering the future economic growth, national security, and etc. that could be gained through unification. However, to minimize the impact of the two countries when they merge, I think we should proceed after being fully prepared.